from day to day. And so it is understanding that those persons who are on our Zoom chat would have gone through the lesson, and anyone that is listening on YouTube, there's some individuals I believe would have gone through the lessons. I know there may be persons who may not have a copy, and so we have to try as much as possible to be clear so they can grasp what we are going to be presenting to them this evening. Right? Our lesson for this evening, the title is Jesus as the Master Teacher. And we have been since the start of this quarter speaking a lot about teacher and master teacher and the ultimate teacher. And I think at this stage, we all recognize that God, through Jesus, He is our master teacher. And so we are supposed to be taking our cue from our master teacher and learn as much as we can so that we can impart to others. Now, the memory text for this quarter is taken from 2 Corinthians 4, verse 6. And it says, "For it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." And as I said, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 6. And as we look at the memory text and focus on what transpired on the Sabbath afternoon, where the author spoke about Billy Graham giving a story about a soldier and the general. And when I read that, I was trying to understand exactly what is it that the author is trying to say to us in this short story, where you have a particular soldier. In the end, we realize that he was working for a general that he has never seen. And when he was at his lowest ebb, we realize that he made a request to see the person's face, that person that he was working for, and never behold the eyes of that individual. And then the last, second to last paragraph said that at the time of Jesus' birth, humanity lay mangled and bleeding in the need of healing vision, in the healing vision of God. It was as though humankind pleaded, "Oh God, could we see your face?" Now, I want someone to tell me, what is it that went through your mind as you would have gone through Sabbath afternoon and even the lesson on a whole? What is the lesson saying to us? What is it that the author wants us to grab from the lesson for this week? Anyone? Or what is it that come to your mind when you read the first a day on the Sabbath afternoon? What is it? In a nutshell, anyone? You must have a view.
I know I'm jumping in and jumping. No, that if the internet is low, it gives that problem because of the size of the power that it has. So but I just want to share this with you. When you look at Sabbath afternoon, Jesus coming down low, stooping down in our condition to show love and compassion to us. I think when and the best way you can teach people basically be able to put in their shoe. And I think that's a message because the general as he said, the soldier, but now that he was there on the canvas, in order for the general to recognize and for him to see his face, he had to go where the guy was in order for him. God had to come down from heaven. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that at all for me, because we had messed up and gone to the lowest we can go. And sometimes evening just up so bad and go so low, but God is still willing to reach out to come and get us. And you cannot say to people in your situation and do nothing really to help. So we teach by the way we relate with people. I love you. Oh, Brother George, I so love you just in front of your face. But after you're gone, it's a totally different story. And so, on Sabbath afternoon, and mainly and blessed. I hope you.
Wonderful, elder, and I think the elder puts it so nicely. And so we as individual, there is this little, should I say, 5-letter word, faith, that we just have to have faith in God. You understand? And so, I mean, when I read Sabbath, I realized that the soldier was working. He was working for the general with all his heart and soul and never saw his face. And here it is now, we as human beings, we are working for Jesus and we have not physically seen his face. What we're doing, everything has to be by faith, right? And that is why it is important that from day to day, we have to strengthen our faith as individuals. Now, when we move over to Sunday, and I'm not going to be going from day to day, right? Because we're going to have a discussion because we have a short time. Now, when we look on the Sunday, we realize that Jesus came and God sent him. And we are told that if we see him, we see the Father. No, that is ironic. And so I try to put it to our day, and I'm saying, are we as individuals, are we willing, are we able to say, those of us, let's say, who have children, are we able to say, if you see me, you see my son, or if you see my son, you see me? You know, I mean, we ever thought about that? And that is why oftentimes we talk about if you have a child, you said, well, okay, I can see the qualities of the father coming out in this child. So we as Christians have to be very careful. And that is why we have to make sure that the life we live is a life that we want our children to imitate. And so as God said, if you see Jesus, you see me. It's the same way we are able to use that with our children here on earth. But we can only do that if we are imitating God. You know how it is when you imitate someone? And so I say to us, if we imitate God and we imitate Jesus, that is extremely important. And that will make us better as individuals. Now, under Sunday, there is a section which says, if we wish to know the Father, we must listen carefully to what the master teacher say about him. And we must watch the master teacher as well. The Father is seen in the Son, right? And so all these little things we have to hold on to because it's going to help us as individuals to pattern our lives after God, realizing that we want our children, and even if that son or daughter is not yours, it could even be a nephew or niece, we want them to be able to say, well, okay, I don't have an earthly father. My earthly father is dead, but I know Elder Joseph is my uncle, and I am able to look at him. I see Jesus in him, and so I'm going to imitate his behavior so that I can live a life that is acceptable in the sight of God. Now, at the end of Sunday, it says that Jesus accurately reflects the Father, something we too are called to do since we are invited to be imitators of God as dear children. What does that mean? And what can we learn from Jesus about how to be imitators of God? You understand? And so we can only do that if we're doing what God expects us to do. We know in life, when we say we imitate a person, we try to talk like the person. We may say we walk like the person, and sometimes we do that saying we are mocking the person. You understand? And so we are talking about imitation in the positive, like a carbon copy. And so if I see Azel, and Azel is going down the street, we normally say, just by the way his whole body structure, I can see Elder Joseph walking down the street. And that is what we're talking about. So the author is trying to say here that we ought to have a life that individuals would want to imitate. Now, if nobody wants to imitate me as a person, then something is wrong, right? And remember, I'm talking about us being a Christian, right? So I'm talking about positive qualities, positive character that individuals would actually want to imitate. Anybody want to weigh in on anything there? Because what I noticed is that the entire week is trying, even though we're talking about that master teacher, is trying to bring out the fact that we are to God, because he came, he was sent by God, and he came that we can understand that everything through he knows exactly what he goes through. And I mean, in life, the staff would feel because you were there, right? And that is why sometimes it's so difficult. We say you put a square peg in a round hole where you just pull a person and put the person to the top. And so we're saying if you move up the ranks, and so the
You're muted.
Okay, yes. So I wanted to add what Brother George was saying. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Your persons are supposed to be able to see us, see Christ through us. The way we live. Oh, the parallel that I'm trying to draw here is slightly different because God and Jesus are one. They are one. And so one, they think alike, they act alike, they everything. They work. No, however, when we are Christians, people should be able to see, know we are different. Not only what we say, but by the way we live. So somebody said, see you, they've never met you before. And all of us, can I ask you a question? Are you a Christian? I don't know if anybody here has had that happen to them. But for sure, not on one occasion, but more on one occasion, people don't know you. And they ask you the question. Just by the way you conduct yourself. So that's my contribution.
All right, and I think I'm back on. I'm having some difficulties with the internet dropping in and out. Okay, wonderful submission, Elder. And as we continue revealing the Father, the Elder did explain to us just a while ago that the Father and Son, they are one. And so that is why sometimes it's so difficult to understand, because sometimes we try to separate the two so that we can get a clear understanding, but then we have to, at the back of our mind, realize that they're one and the same. You understand? And that is why the whole Godhead is so unique. You understand? And so all of this we just have to accept by faith. Now, we're going to jump right over to Monday. That is actually bringing out a point here where we have in John 14, verse 8. If we look at John 14, verse 8, it says that Philip said unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. Now, that is interesting, because here we are, that Philip has been around, and he's asking to see the Father. Isn't that ironic? And so the author at the bottom is saying, it is tempting to criticize Philip's blundering statement. After years of close fellowship with Jesus, he still missed the essential point of the incarnation. that Jesus has to come to show the Father's character, right? Now, listen to what the author is saying to us. Perhaps teachers today can take some comfort in the fact that one of the master teacher's pupils performed badly. You know, a lot of us as individuals, we find excuses when we do wrong things, or we think we find an excuse, and we said, oh, elder so and so did it, or the pastor do it, or I don't mind because even the pastor, they're sinning too. You understand? Now we need to understand, as the author is saying here, we have to take responsibility for our own action. The pastor is a human like me and like you. The pastor has sinful bones in his body, just like me and just like you. You understand? And the pastor needs a savior, just like me and just like you. And so the author is saying that we, even though Philip made that blunder, we have to look at that and see the positiveness out of what actually transpired, what took place. Because Peter's statement, the author is saying, is probably recorded, though not to give us reason to criticize him, but to give us an opportunity to examine ourselves. How long have we walked with Jesus? And have we understood Jesus any better than Philip had? Whosoever has seen me has seen the Father. And so what the author is saying, all of us are supposed to be growing in grace. We're supposed to be growing and doing the thing that is expected of us as Jesus. So what happened is that even if we make a mistake, or even if someone make a mistake and we know that person was in high ranks, it is not a license now for us to say, because the person made that mistake, we then have the license to make the same mistake. No, it is for us to examine ourselves and see exactly what we're doing, where we're going, and use what the person would have done to do or make a change in our lives. And that is extremely, extremely, extremely important, right? And so we are not supposed to be, we saw that from the very beginning in the Garden of Eden. We are not supposed to be playing any blame game. And I think earlier on in our lessons that went past, the question was asked, is it easier for us now as human? And some may say yes, some may say no. But at least we have a little comfort to say, well, at least we saw what actually transpired before. And so we have something that we can look at and then pattern our lives so that we can be different. They may not have had anything to look at before. You understand? And so even though, as we said, the master teacher, because some would say the master teacher is right in front of you. And so you feel strong. And so even if you want to do something, you may not do it because the master teacher is there. It's just like you have your father, and your father is in the very room with you, standing up, and you are a little devil in terms of your behavior. But you're going to be a lamb in front of your father because you know you're going to get a lash once you would have done something wrong. You understand? And so when the father is not there, then you're going to be your real self, and then the little devil that is within you is going to come out. And so one may say, oh, well, they have the father right in front of them, and so hence they were supposed to have behaved much better, right? But then, as I said, that may not necessarily be the case, because we do have children who are defiant and would even rebel even in front of their parents, right? And what do? We don't use that as a license to do bad things because somebody else is actually doing it, right? And so what we're saying here, and I actually mark in my quarterly, extremely important, right? That Philip would have done something very badly, according to him not having that faith, knowing that he walked with Jesus for so many years. But we have to use his error or his blunder as a way to examine ourselves and make our lives better. So we're not playing any blame game. All right. So,
Brother George.
yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh.
I have a question. Was Philip wrong to ask that question? Show me the Father.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the elder explained, but I don't think it's a matter of him being wrong because Philip is human, right? And so the idea is he should understand that the Father is seeing in the Son and they want the same, right? So we see it as a blunder, right? And it tells us that it doesn't matter who we are as individuals, we are prone to make mistakes, right? But the issue is when we make a mistake, we don't stay in error, we move on and we try to fix through Jesus what we would have done wrong, right? And so it speaks to us as human beings, making a little blunder now and again. So though it was, we can say it is wrong because if he was not supposed to have said that, then it has to be wrong, right? But always saying that in his human self, that is expected, right? I don't know if you want, Ella, if you want to weigh
No,
in.
but because why I'm asking the well, Jesus knows the heart of everyone and what um they would have been exposed to know that they should have already picked up that he's reflecting the Father. But what the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes we, and I know I had the experience, I could not um I could see Jesus and the Father being one. I had a difficulty with that. But
Can I make a
by
submission?
sharing it, okay,
I just
Marilyn
want to
wants to
make
make
a
a submission.
submission. It didn't answer your question. I don't know. What my thought is that Philip didn't understand that Jesus Christ came to reveal the Father. So Philip was looking for two distinct, individual, Jesus and the Father. Philip didn't understand. Once he see Christ, the works that Christ came to do, the Christ came to set an example, is what the Father sent him to do. So Philip didn't really, at the point following, and the number of the disciples didn't understand either. Although Philip came out and asked the question, because I believe Philip genuinely didn't understand who the Father was, although he was following Christ all those years. All right, so he made a blunder, yes, because his understanding wasn't open following Christ and recognizing, hey, Jesus is the example reflecting the Father, so they are one. So he genuinely and honestly did not understand the work of the Christ is the same as the work of the Father. I hope that helped. But it wasn't wrong for him to answer the question. It's just that at that point, he did following Christ, he did not understand that Jesus Christ is a resemblance of the Father.
Okay.
I hope that is clear.
Okay, I will though I will accept the elders submission. When we look at the lesson said that perhaps teachers today can take some comfort in the fact that one of the master teacher's pupils performed so badly. And so in spite of the fact that I accept the submission given by the elder, we are told here that he performed badly. And if you perform badly, it simply means that then you would have done something wrong. Now, it is not for us to determine the heart of Philip. Now, Sister Dell did ask the question, and I understand clearly what Sister Dell is saying because what happened is that, I mean, we are judged based on our knowledge. And if we don't have the knowledge and we do something, though it may be wrong, God knows our hearts and He knows our intention. And so He is the one that is going to vindicate us and because He knows, as I said, He knows our heart. But we as human would not necessarily know, even though we can say, well, listen, this is what we think Philip did not, or Philip did, or what have you. We are speculating what it is because we don't know the heart of Philip. And so it is with us as human beings. We don't know the heart of anyone. A person can do something and we know what the person did was wrong. But the person is very innocent because the person doesn't have the knowledge of that particular situation. God knows the person's heart. And because of that situation, God is the only one that could help that individuals. I mean, even us as Seventh-day Adventists, Christians, when we have our crusades, we talk to individual, and there are a lot of things that, we said we give and take for a person who doesn't have the knowledge. But if you have the knowledge and then you act, then we said, well, you are aware, even us as Christian, you grow as a baby like you're taking milk. And so we don't expect a baby that is milk and afterwards would work and different. So it's Christian life or Christian God knows. I recently heard
Brother George,
But
the point I'm trying to make is that if someone is listening and may not understand, or they cannot see their one, it's nothing wrong to ask God, ask the Holy Spirit to show us who God is to his son. Nothing is wrong with that. That's the point I'm trying to make.
yeah,
absolutely.
but that the elder also pointed out, and he said I think he said earlier he made a note in the quarterly, and I'm looking at it, which he says it's not for us to criticize what Philip, just summarizing, what Philip asked is not for us to criticize Philip's statement, but it's for us to look for the opportunity to examine ourselves that we have been long with Christ, we're walking with Christ, and we still don't know Christ's mission and his purpose, and even seeing the image of the Father being reflected in Christ, so it changes us to his image.
Absolutely,
And
elder.
that's the lesson the elder pointed out earlier. And so that is not for us, it's not for us to be hammering Philip over the head whether he was wrong, he's a bad student or good student. Is to show, just as Philip walking with Christ for all these years, he didn't recognize that the Father is the one in his presence trying to reconcile him to himself to be saved. I hope that made sense in some way.
Absolutely, elder. It made
May I come in?
perfect sense, real sense. And that is
Um,
exactly what we're
brother,
trying to bring across here.
brother teacher, may I come in?
Yes, you can.
Yes. Sorry I got in late. But beautiful discussion.
That is,
But
your excuse, birthday boy. Your excuse. Your excuse. Yeah.
it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. But I love the discussion, and I accept all the submission from you, brother teacher, sister Joseph, and Elder Parker. But we recognize that it is quite possible for us to be with God, for us to be in a relationship with God, as we would say, and still not know him. What does this mean for us when we look at Philip's situation? Of course, not just to criticize, but it should cause us to take a look at ourselves. Do we really know God? I mean, do we really have a connection with the Father to the point where that when men and women see us, that they see the Father? And I think this might be one of our challenge. I don't know if I should use the word challenge, but what do men and women see when they look at us? Mark you that, I mean, I might be the only Jesus that Brother George, for example, is going to see, right? And so Philip was with Jesus, yes, right? But even though he was with Jesus, still he's asking, show me the Father, right? Are we any different? Are we any different? And if so, how? This is a rhetorical question, of course. But if so, how? But really and truly, it is possible for us to be in a relationship with God and still fully not in God, right? And the question is that we need to ask ourselves. We all have our influence of circle. But when men and women, when others see us, are they seeing Christ? Are they seeing a reflection of Christ in us? And I think perhaps that's what we really need to ask ourselves and to endeavor as sons and daughters of God, as followers of God, right? That we be the Christ that others should see, right? Let's be a reflection of Christ.
And that submission is
Brother
excellent.
teacher, brother teacher,
Yes, go on.
yes, good evening. Happy
Yes,
Sabbath to everyone. I
thank
just
you.
like I just like to make a comment. Philip literally was walking with Jesus, and Philip asked the question to show him the Father. Jesus said to Philip that, have you been with me all these years and have not known and have not seen the Father? Now, we as children of God is not literally walking with Jesus side by side like Philip. We are walking in the spirit with Jesus. Do we who are walking not physically with Jesus, do we really know who Jesus is? Because we have to know who Jesus is. Are we really walking with Jesus?
All right. I like your question, Brother Ian, but when you started, I thought you were trying to say, I thought you wanted to say that it is more difficult for us because we're not walking with Jesus physically. But you didn't say that, right?
Yeah,
But I want to end that was telling, and I learned because basically what he's saying is that when we look at what happened in Philip's situation, we realize that we as individuals here, we could be in a relationship with Jesus in inverted commas and really don't know him. And that is what the elder is saying. And so that is why we are told what happened with Philip is not for us to criticize, for us to examine ourselves and see where we fall short. Because it's something that happened to us on a daily basis. Notice the author said that some teachers today, and that is understood because I mean, I am guilty. We're all guilty when individuals do wrong things and individuals mess up. We think it is, and especially if the person is an elder. So if Elder Jonathan mess up, we think that it's a talking point, and all of us are guilty and supposed to change. And so the lessons, I mean, if we don't get anything else from the lesson, we ought to change our behavior. So when individuals make mistakes, individuals mess up, we have to understand that we have to examine ourselves, see where we're going wrong, and if we can help the person, we help the person to change his or her attitude, his or her behavior. If no one wants to weigh in anymore, we could move over swiftly to Tuesday because there's something interesting on the Tuesday that we ought to look at. If we look at the last paragraph of Tuesday and we want to read the master teacher's mind read now. In contrast, the world also often invites us to exalt ourselves, to boast of our accomplishment. At a manger in Bethlehem, and from the master teacher, we learn a different lesson, that God's great work of education and salvation is accomplished not by exalting ourselves, but by humbling ourselves before God and becoming servants to others, right? And I think we ought to spend a moment that, because, hey, look, we're all guilty when we find ourselves in certain situation, or we would have accomplished something. Sometimes we tend to boast about our accomplishments, and we're all guilty because it's human to be excited when things go nice along our path, right? We ought to always remember that whatever happened to us in life happened as a result of the Almighty. And so we ought to stay humble, give him all the blessings, give him all the praise and the glory that is due unto his name. Now, it is not taken away from the fact that we are the ones who would have done. And that is why sometimes individuals often prefer other people to talk about their accomplishment rather than they talking about their accomplishment. And mark you, I'm not saying that is anything wrong if you speak about your accomplishment, as long as you give God all the praise and the glory that is due unto his name. Let me hear your comment on that.
You see, when we one of the points that I see coming through is that of love for others, concern of others, exalting others as opposed to exalting one's self. Um, you know, there's always perhaps the human tendency for embedded in us with empty conceit. But when we are truly connected to Christ and we look at each other as Christ's own, then we recognize that there's a certain way that we ought to look at others and treat others, right? As opposed to the human, natural human tendency to want to exalt ourselves and to put ourselves above others, right? But if we have the Christ of mind, the mind of Christ, then we will seek to exalt others above ourselves. I don't know if anybody saw that coming through, but I got that coming out of the day's lesson. I've made acceptance for everybody.
And that is exactly what it is, because some time ago we looked at the mind of Christ. Now we ask to read the mind of Christ. When we read the mind of Christ, just as you're saying, we see its service to man, service to others, and being humble. Because he himself set that example. He came, and as the Apostle Paul reminds us, to let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, was the mind. He humbled himself and became a servant. So that's the mind of Christ. So when as Christians we read that mind, it's supposed to act upon us and want to be like that mind. So we will humble ourselves, whatever accolades or whatever achievements we have. We let the mind of Christ be in us. We humble ourselves and serve others, serve those who are around us. That's the mind of Christ. So as we are afforded the opportunity to read Christ's mind as saints of God. Our after reading, our understanding, our action should be, hey, Christ's mind is first to humble himself and to be of good service to others. And that's my submission. So you were right along that part. That's one of the way I'm thinking also.
Mr. Teacher, I see Elder Joseph had his mic open. I don't know if he indicated if you wanted to speak. Elder Oswald.
Okay, Elder Oswald, you want to weigh in on something here? Help us out.
Yeah, good night. Sorry I got in late. I didn't know you started that early. But if we remember, we're talking about Jesus, the master teacher. And just to put the thing all together, remember we are told, trying to remember that long time ago, God used to talk to us through prophets. We know that in dreams and visions. And these days, he's talking to us through his son, whom he has appointed heir. As it were, God these days is using Jesus to be his spokesperson, that we may learn from him. And in talking and walking and ministering with his disciples, one of these days, Jesus told them, look, I am going somewhere. You know, and Thomas said, but Lord, I mean, and you got to follow me. Thomas said, Lord, but how are we going to follow you? We don't know where you're going. You know, show us the way. And Jesus said, well, I am the way, I am the truth, and I'm the life. You know, no one comes to the Father but by me. And if we know him, we will have known the Father. So Philip got a little confused now, and we can't blame Philip. Philip is walking, remember their perception of who Jesus was. Not who Jesus is, but who Jesus was as they saw him. So Philip said, well, Lord, show us the Father then, and it will make us feel happy. Jesus wanted to teach him a lesson. He said, but you're walking so long with me and you don't know the Father. If you see me, you have seen the Father. Now, we got to remember who the disciples were and what they were up against. You know, yes, they were walking with Jesus, but their perception of who Jesus was quite wrong. And as Jesus spoke to them as he did then, if you see me, you see the Father. And then what we take away from that in Jesus trying to reveal the Father through what he did was to teach the disciples who his Father was. He's a loving person, he's compassionate, he's merciful. And all those things that Jesus did was to teach them, educate them about who God was. When he had the encounter with the woman at the well, was to teach them. With the centurion, was to teach them. The gospel is not for you Jews alone. Everybody is part of it. He was trying to let them know who God was, a God of love, a God of all of that. Now, what do we take away from that? Paul says to us, now we have understood what Christ is. Now we are ambassadors for Christ. Jesus came as an ambassador for his Father to teach us who the Father is. And now Paul said, now that you have understood that, you now ought to be an ambassador. For somebody says, the clearest picture of God that anybody will see is going to be you, Leon. It's going to be you, Jonathan. It is going to be you, Ian. You are going to be the closest picture of God that anybody will see. So just as Jesus came and by his life, he demonstrated, he taught, he gave the knowledge of who God is. So are we in our lives. As we have learned from Christ, we now become ambassadors, and we must teach others who God is by what we do. Let me ask a question here. In the service at the communion, the service of the feet washing, what was Jesus trying to teach his disciples? Coming out of Philippians, let this mind be in you. And he said, I want you to be of one mind, of one accord. In Philippians, which is one of the most profound texts that talks about the life of Jesus, Jesus says, I want you to be of one accord and of one mind. Let this mind be in you. I want it to be of one mind. At the communion service, Jesus was just about to leave and go back to the Father, but he did something profound. What did Jesus do? And what was he teaching his disciples? Coming out of that same Philippians that you made mention of, Brother Leon. What was Jesus teaching the disciples at the Last Supper when he sat with them? What was he trying to teach them about the Father?
The elder actually summed the whole thing up. You realize the elder summed up the whole lesson, and it was so nice. Better, right? So, elder, even as we move on to Wednesday, the question was teaching us reconciliation. That was a big point there. Reconciliation. Okay. So all the art that you have against your brother, all the things, leave everything there, right? And everybody have to be in one accord. We're in one place, in one accord, right? And that is extremely important. You understand? And so I think you asked that question because I think it's something that is plaguing us as individuals. And the whole idea of the foot washing is so important. It is so significant. But because we keep doing it as a form, most of us do it and we really don't understand the significance of it, right? When we're finished with that, and that is why we do that foot washing before we get back there to drink, sup at the table, because we have to rid ourselves of all the wrongs, all the things that we have, leave everything there. And now let's come and sit around the table as one, and we're all in one accord. And so it actually ties into Wednesday, and the elder did it, reconciliation. Human relationships too often break down. We become estranged from one another. The person who was once our close friend become over time someone we distrust. However, such a broken relationship can be mended. When that happens, we experience the wonder of reconciliation. Few human experiences are as sweet as this. And that is how I would sum up and answer Elder's question. The whole idea of reconciliation, and that will take in everything. And once we can do that, we will find ourselves in that state of mind that we're supposed to be in one accord, once we get around that communion table. Anybody else want to add anything or weigh in on it?
You know, so as not to let the time. So, Brother Leon, could you look at it a little deeper? Could you imagine? You remember Jesus coming here in Wednesday and Tuesday to talk about unity. Philippians is talking about let this be in you. Jesus, the Master, condescended, took on human form, be a slave, died down here, worked down there. Can you imagine that? Now, at the communion service, Jesus must be saying to himself, look, I've been trying to teach these fellows something for the last 3.5 years. Now I'm going back to the Father. And they still ain't get it. At the Last Supper, Jesus did a dramatic thing. Jesus took off his cloth, wrapped a towel around him, throw water in a basin, kneel down like a servant, took each disciple's feet in his hand and washed it and dried it with the towel. Then he put back on his robe and he sat down around the table and he said to them, do you understand the lesson I just taught you? Do you see what I was trying to educate you about? To let you want to see the Father? This is the Father. He said, look, I am your Lord and Master, and you call me so. So if I, your Lord and Master, can humble myself, kneel down, and wash your feet, you ought to do the same. So Peter, James, John, Andrew, Matthew, all of you, I want you to understand that. You understand real humility, real unity, when you do the same thing that I do. You hear about it? Happy are you if you do it. And so we remember when every time we got around that foot washing thing again, we remember Jesus, the Master, kneeling down and washing his disciples' feet, telling them, look, I hope by doing this, you understand exactly what I'm trying to teach you now. And that's why Christ could have said, as you said, no, Brother Leon, in Wednesday, God was in Jesus Christ reconciling, buying back, redeeming the world unto himself. And hear what Paul said. Now that you understand that, and this is heavy. Paul says, now we as Christians are given the ministry of reconciliation. You understand that God is in Jesus reconciling the entire world unto himself. Paul says, no, Julian, you have been given that same ministry of reconciliation. So Jonathan's straying away, somebody's straying away, whatever. You got to be one to reconcile them, bring them back. What are we learning this week? Jesus, the master teacher, taught many things. And everything he taught, he said, now that you have seen me do it, you go and you do likewise. Fantastic.
Great.
Elder, I wanted to add to Elder. My voice is not so good, but I really wanted to add the fact that Jesus was with the disciples. It's not only that teaching that the elders spoke of, but even after his death, they had walked with him and he had said it to them so many times and they still did not get it. And
Right.
my question is it that many of us are still walking with him today and yet do not fully grasp who Jesus is?
Quite right. You know?
A follow-up question to that. What could be the cause of that? I'm walking with Jesus and I don't know him. What are some of the causes?
You know, if we run back to the Christmas story, as we are being taught there in Thursday, we look at it, we can learn a lesson from and way back then, those shepherds on the hillside and the wise men, they got a message from on high that the baby born in the manger was Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. When they got the message, check it out, the shepherds ran back to the village, as it were, to give them that news that the shepherd gave them. They were praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, peace, goodwill. They have found the Messiah. And when the wise men heard it, they did the same thing. They said, look, they followed the star. And when they came to where the babe was, they went in. They kneeled down and they worshiped God. Even though he was a baby, they recognized who he was. And as a baby, they worshipped him. The shepherds and the wise men, as the lesson said, the first pupils of the Messiah. Now, way back then when he was yet a baby, they recognized who Jesus was. Could it be then, Dale, that we're really walking up and down, well, so we say with him, but we really don't know who he really is? Because we are not looking at him the way we should. We are not looking at the lessons that he taught us. And so we missed the point. It's just like Philip and all the disciples. They walked with Jesus and they never knew who Jesus was. And that's why Jesus had to say to Peter, Peter, get you behind me, Satan, because you don't even know savor is the thing that be of God. You don't understand what is going on. Their eyes were not beholding what Jesus was trying to teach them. We could be walking up and down with Jesus, doing all kind of stuff, but our eyes are not seeing. And that's why Jesus said, some of our eyes and they see not, they have ears and they hear not. And so Thursday is calling us to go back to the wise men and to the shepherds, who, when they heard about who Jesus was, did not waste time. The shepherds immediately left their sheep. So urgent was that news that Christ is born, and they went to spread the message to everybody. When the wise men heard it, they left all the way from the east and they came down here, searched for the child until they found it. Could it be then there that we are not really searching for Jesus? And how do we search for him? All those lessons that he taught us about unity, about humility, about forgiveness, about love, about mercy. Unless we are willing to practice, Paul says, in all of these things, we are now ambassadors. And we are to go out and do those things. Jesus said, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. So the point is, yes, all these things are there. But as individuals, we have to search for them. We have to search for Jesus. And we'll find him in the lessons he's trying to teach us. The master teacher. Unity, humility, reconciliation. Thank you.
Excellent submission, Elder. And just to add one final point to what the Elder said, I think what happens, Sister Del, too, is that we as individuals at times, we become very complacent. We're doing things over and over and over and over again. And so we don't really understand the true meaning of what we're doing. We just do it. And so after a while, it's just like us, let's say, going to church on the Sabbath. We just go because it is the Sabbath. We just go because it's the Sabbath. And we just think it is okay just to go because it is the Sabbath. And we're not going deep, as the elder is saying, searching, and see what he expects of us. study, try to understand, work with each other. These are the things that we have to do to strengthen ourselves and fortify ourselves. Now, I see, Elder, the time is coming to an end because I think we have until 6:45. But I want to get in this last part on the discussion question where it says, what does the birth, life, and death of Jesus teach us about the character of God? Elder brought out some of it just a while ago. Why should this be so comforting to us, especially during times of great trials? And we are basically going through some trials right now with this COVID pandemic that we don't even know A from B, left from right. We don't really know what is going on. What should be our comforting? Why should this be so comforting to us, especially in these times? We are to recognize that God is ever present. He's all around us. Our God is loving. He's caring. He's selfless. And these are the things we're supposed to recognize. So it doesn't matter what we are going through right now. Our focus should be on God. God will never see us suffer. Whatever we are going through, God is going to protect us. And so in spite of pandemic, even though we are going to protect ourselves and make sure we keep ourselves safe, we ought to recognize that as long as we stay close to him and we stay in his arm, he is willing to protect us. And that is going to be a lesson. That is going to be a testimony to others around us. When they see how we move, when they see how we live, and they wonder if you don't care. No, we are children of God. God will protect us. So we're going to be careful, but we're still going to be moving as if God is the one in control of everything. And because of what is happening in this sinful world, these things are happening to us, but God will continue to protect his own. Elder, you want to sum up? Because we only have like around 2 more minutes. If you want to just sum it up finally so that we can, have one final understanding as to exactly what is our purpose for this week.
Beautiful. It is a great lesson, and we should always come back to it. And as you're rightly trying to say, we don't have to worry, because this week we are looking at Jesus, the master teacher, and he wants to teach us. And that is why he quietly said to Thomas and to Philip, you're walking all along with me and you really don't know the Father. If you see me, you have seen the Father. There's a lot that Jesus is saying in these words. Jesus is saying, look, if you observe the things that I do, those things that I do are the very things that my Father wants me to do. Remember, Jesus was the express image of his Father, the spokesman for the Father. Said, I have come to reveal the Father to you, that you can look and see what I do, see how I live, see how I teach, all the things that I'm trying to do and say to you, and do those things. This is what my Father wants you to understand. And then he says, as Paul reminds us now that you have seen me and you have seen those things that I do, I want you to go out there and I want you to practice it. No wonder, Brother Leon, that when Jesus knelt down and washed your feet, Peter was astonished. Peter couldn't understand it. And Peter said, Lord, no, you can't wash my feet. I mean, you, my Lord and Master, washing my feet. He couldn't understand. And then he said, could you imagine, Brother Leon, that somebody did you something wrong and you went to them at the communion service at the foot washing and you say, well, that thing, and you take his hand and you're kneeling down before him. Humility, and you're washing his feet. No matter, he had to be a real hard-hearted person not to accept that lesson. That's a lesson that Jesus gave. And as Jesus said, let us all go there. He said, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. Thank you very much, brethren. Let us try to do them.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you very much, Elder. Over to you, Elder Edson.
Good.
Right here.